Right, hello everybody. I think we've reached 10 o'clock, which is when we're due to start with the session. Obviously, thanks for joining. We're getting towards the numbers that we have registered, so hopefully everybody that wants to be here is here or going to join over the next couple of minutes. Yeah. Welcome to the open day. What we'll do just to start off with is there's 3 admissions tutors here at Selwyn. So the easiest thing to do is to kind of introduce ourselves so you get an idea of who we are and what we do. So my name's Stuart Eves. I'm Director of Study in Veterinary Medicine, so I'm a vet, but I'm admissions tutor, which means I kind of oversee the admissions round for subjects, well, veterinary and medicine, and then the kind of biological subjects, so biological NATSCI and psychology. And then also maths is thrown in for me just to keep me on my toes. And then I will ask my 2 colleagues to unmute themselves and introduce themselves.
Right, so if I go first, my name's Daniel Beauregard. I'm also an admissions tutor, the other admissions tutor for sciences. One of my other college roles is I'm Director of Studies in Natural Sciences. And additionally, I'm the chair of the Gardens Committee in Selwyn.
Hello everyone, my name is Kirsty McDougall. I'm here today because I'm admissions tutor for all the art subjects, arts, humanities and social sciences, but my specialism is linguistics and phonetics in particular. My research area is in forensic phonetics, so I'm interested in analysing speech recordings related to criminal cases and all areas of linguistics. But today I'm here as the arts admissions tutor, so I'm involved in doing the admissions processes for all of the arts, humanities and social science subjects. I'm just going to take a quick moment to mention to Daniel that if you can increase your microphone a bit, that would help too.
Wonderful. So the plan really for what we're going to do today is there's a kind of 25-minute presentation, a 25-minute talk. And the idea behind doing this is to really try to get everybody to a similar kind of level. Some of you will know an awful lot of this material, but we're aware of the fact that for a lot of people, this is very much new ground. So we'll try and do that. The idea is that we're then going to have the rest of the time really for questions. Now, the way we've decided to do questions, as you've probably noticed, we've muted you and we've turned your video off. And I promise you, it's absolutely not that we don't want to hear from you. It's really just that obviously when we're talking to nearly 40 people, you get an awful lot of kind of problems with microphones and with speakers. And I hear myself back with an echo, which is absolutely terrifying. So that's really the reason we've done that. But we have the chat function. So the chat function is live. Please use the chat rather than Q&A, because the chat function actually allows us to for everybody to see the answers or for us to kind of respond to everybody. So that's a better way of doing things. You should see it, if you don't know how to do it, if you move your cursor onto the main screen, you should have a little bar appear. And if you hover over the different icons, the chat should then appear for you. But yeah, absolutely welcome questions. Please do. You can always submit them as anonymous if you really want to. But I promise you, there will not be a question we haven't heard before. The one thing I would say about questions, though, is if you have something that is very, very specific to you, and what I mean is you get examples of people who have lived in various different countries and they're asking about very specific kind of offer and standard offer levels. It's much better that you do that with us by email. We'll give you our email addresses over the course of this session several times, but approach us by email because it's probably very unlikely that anyone else in the virtual room would maybe even follow what the situation is, let alone benefit from it. So we'd love to hear from you, but please, if you feel it's very specific to you, an email to admissions would be a much better way of doing it. Right, I think I've cleared everything. So what I'll do is I'll look for the other 2 to nod at me that I haven't forgotten anything I meant to do. And if that's the case, I will start going. Kirsty's nodding enthusiastically. Let's go with that. Right, so let's start the session. And what we're going to go through is how to make a competitive application. What I will do actually is I'll turn my video off as well so that you're not distracted by those boxes. So making a competitive application. So we're going to go through really the process that you guys will potentially be going through, and then the process that we go through really trying to just enlighten you on how the system works. So when we think about what's critical for a kind of successful application, we go by the 4 R's, and as you'll see, they're a bit of a tenuous R in some cases. But the first thing we look at is the right subject. You know, is the subject you're applying for something that you're passionate about, something that you're going to enjoy taking to the next level, and most importantly, have you researched all the options that might be in that area? So what always comes to my mind at this point is something like history. So you have history in Cambridge, you can study history, but we've also got things like history and politics, or history and languages, or you have things like ASNAC. Now ASNAC is Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic, so it's obviously a very kind of restricted part. Or archaeology, you know, they're all down as history, and yet there's all these different options available to you. So the right subject to some degree is about working out exactly what you want to study within any given area. The next thing is an excellent academic record. And what I mean by that is we're really looking that people are working at a level that they would meet our typical offer level. So you can find those on the various websites for the subjects. They'll tell you what the typical offer level is. And obviously we're looking at things like the previous grade. So that's probably GCSEs, but obviously it could be a whole wealth of different things. But we're looking that they are at a similar level of achievement within your schooling. Okay, so that is the kind of excellent level that we're looking at. Things, of course, vary. And that's, you know, we know that some people will improve as they go from GCSE to A level, but we're looking at people being around those areas. The ability to read and think kind of critically, analytically is really important. And what that means is, have you explored around your subject? You know, what happens when you don't know the answer to something? Do you just go, well, you know, that's just a mystery, or do you start pushing for certain answers to it? And there's many ways of doing that, but that kind of shows the ability to move on and to think critically about things. Is sometimes you'll find that you get 2 answers to a question, and it's about working out which one you think is right, or which one you think brings the most to the argument. So there's that kind of element to things, not just taking on board what somebody said, but actually analysing what's been said about things to try and work out how it fits into your knowledge. And finally, this embed and revise. So can you integrate the material that you learn about into a bigger picture? So can you make links between what's going on, and can you kind of say, oh, well, I see how that fits with what I learnt about at A level or at IB or at your Scottish Highers? It's that kind of level of things, and we find all of those are important, if I'm honest, for any university course anywhere you go. But obviously it's very important for us as well that people have these abilities. Now, this is a slide that when I produce these slides, honestly, it's moved around several times because I never know the best place to put it. And I guess I've put it at the start really so I can just emphasize these as being important. The first thing to say is that the UCAS application deadline for Oxbridge, so not just Cambridge, but Oxford as well, the UCAS deadline is the 15th of October. That's a lot earlier than the standard deadlines. So hopefully yourselves and your schools are aware of that. Now, also as part of the UCAS application to Cambridge, we have these pre-interview assessments, and the registration date for those is also the 15th. So when the UCAS deadline goes in, it's also really important that your school or college has registered you for the pre-interview assessments. But again, it's all that you really need to do is jog your school's memory and just make sure that they're aware of what's going on. There is a slight aside, just speaking to the medics here, the deadline for the first BMAT, which is the standard fee, is actually the 1st of October, so it's a little bit earlier. There is actually a later deadline, but you pay that little bit more, and who wants to do that? So if you know you're doing it, if you keep in mind the first, but it's not your only bite of the cherry if anything kind of does go awry. Now, you know, welcome to the world of Cambridge, because what happens is when you submit your UCAS application, and if you've put Cambridge down as one of those one of your options, almost immediately you get an email back saying, congratulations, you've chosen Cambridge, but you've got to do a little bit more work. And that's because we have the Cambridge supplementary questionnaire, and effectively what this is we need a little bit more information as part of your application, and the deadline for that is a week after the UCAS application deadline. So if that was on the 15th, it's on the 22nd. So all I would say is if you are going to apply to Cambridge, when you submit your UCAS application, don't submit it and then turn your computer off and not look at it again for a week, because unfortunately you're going to find that there's an email there saying, well, there'll be several because we'll be chasing you as well. So just be aware of that being the case. Right, so they're the kind of dates. The next thing to kind of go through is what we look for in the applications, and really in somebody that we think is going to be a student that's going to thrive here. The first thing is a genuine interest in the subject. You know, do you really want to study this particular subject at a high level for another 3 years? And, you know, potentially with masters and PhDs, that could go on to 6 or 7 years, and you might be doing it for a career. So we're looking for that genuine interest in the subject that's going to fuel you through, hopefully, the great times, but also there will be times when things are a bit tough. You know, that's the reality of anything you do. There'll be times when interest can waver, but the real enthusiasm means that it's very, very easy to get it back. The next thing we look at is, do you have a core kind of grounding in the relevant subjects that will allow you to thrive? And we're really looking at, is this somebody who has the ability to come in and on day one with the lectures and various other things, will at least be able to sit there and go, this is fine, I get this, I understand. So we've got to look for that kind of core knowledge and a fluency, you know, understanding the language that's being used. It doesn't have to be everything, of course it doesn't have to be everything, but it has to be that we feel assured that this is somebody that can start off running. We're always looking for potential, you know, do you still have room to advance and grow and become better? So we're always looking for people that are on the upward side of the curve, that are really just, you know, they're meeting each level with the enthusiasm and the ability and can keep going. We're looking for focus, we're looking for determination, you know, people that can, well, it goes with the next point, actually, the ability to learn independently. University study, wherever you are, there will be a huge component where you are independently learning. Now, at Cambridge and at Oxford as well, we have this kind of supervision system where you actually get to sit down with your lecturers. It's a predetermined time in the week where you get to sit down with them and actually go through things. So we actually have support in that area, but it's very important that when you come to things like supervisions and when you come out of lectures, you say, I need to go and look at that again. I need to work out what they were saying, so that in a supervision, we can say, well, how did you find this part of the material? And it's really important you said, well, you know what, I struggled a bit in the lecture and I went away and I looked at it and this is where my problem is, because then we can kick on, then we can go. So any university is going to want you to be able to work independently. And that means you have to have that focus and that determination to do it, because, you know, we all get distracted by things. So it's that area. And again, it's the interest in the subject. It's the passion for it. There has to be a good fit between the applicant and the course. And that can be one of many things. You know, I think about, you know, the medics, and there's certain aspects to studying medicine where some people kind of say, oh, I really don't like the idea of that. And you have to work out whether that is what you're okay with or not. But it goes to other things as well. Cambridge is a system where the vast majority of the work is done at end of year exams, or the vast majority of the assessment is done at end of year exams. Not every subject, but a lot of them, that is when the assessment happens. And as such, if you're somebody that really enjoys coursework and really thrives with the coursework aspect, that might mean that this isn't the university for you. And I don't want to put people off, but you've got to ask yourselves these questions as you go through. You know, if your strongest performance is in coursework, and if exams are something that really worry you and can be a problem, you have to ask yourself the question is if you really want to be part of what is usually an exam-based system. But look at the courses and they will tell you the kind of usual division. And then maybe finally some vocational commitment. Now, this is something that's been very difficult with the current crisis. We appreciate that it is incredibly difficult to get, if you like, work experience. But for certain courses, we have always traditionally asked for it. It's really to assure us that these are people that understand what the future career is about, because that is the most likely process that people go through. But as I say, we fully appreciate that that's a very difficult thing at the moment, and we are, of course, being flexible. So key information in selection. Key information that we use as part of actually, I guess, first of all, choosing the people that we're going to interview, and then obviously choosing about offers. So the first one is the academic record. You know, we do want people to be working at a good level, a level that they can thrive here. And as I say, hopefully continuing to improve on that. We're going to look at the UCAS reference because we want to know what your school, what your college, what your teachers think about you. We're going to look at your personal statement. I often get asked, you know, when I get to know students, they kind of say, did you really read my personal statement? And the answer is absolutely, several times. Okay, we really do read them. So it is an important thing for us because it's your opportunity to speak to us. We want to hear your voice. And I'm actually going to go into personal statements a little bit more in a second. We're going to look at any test or assessment results. So this can be submitted work and or the admissions assessments. And again, I'm going to go through this in a minute. Contextual data, so we will get information about postcodes about where people live and information about schools, so class sizes and opportunities that were available at the schools. And really what we're doing is we're looking at the performance of any given student within the school cohort. So we're getting a feel for how everyone has done at that school, and then we really use that to get a gauge on how well somebody has performed within that aspect. As I say, we get some submitted work, and of course for the students that get to interview, we will look at their performance at the interview. That becomes part of it because there's another aspect of information we get from there, and again I'm going on with that in a second. So personal statements, you know, what are they? What are we trying to achieve with them? Well, what I would always stress to people, and when I speak to people, what I say is it's the only chance you get to speak to the admissions teams. Okay, up until now we have all this information on paper, and we have, if you like, the school's impression of you because of the college reference. But what we don't know is your impression of you, if you like, what you feel you bring. So you want to be writing with a purpose. You want to be writing with the idea that you're speaking to the admissions teams and you're saying to them, I want to study this course at university and this is why. This is the skills I can bring. This is my background in it. This is my enthusiasm for it. So that is your purpose. And there's a limited number of words, and what that means is you've got to be selective on what you include. You always want to go back, and almost for anything you mention, you want to be saying, how does that relate to me being good for this course, being good for the university life? It means you have to be critical on some things. We can learn an awful lot about things that I wouldn't say go wrong, but sometimes you realize that you don't want to do certain things because you don't enjoy them. And that's fine. It might help to steer you towards the course you really do want. And finally, you need to be analytical about things. You want to be thinking about where things have got you, and really analysing or trying to show your ability to analyse what you've learnt from your studies, what you've learnt from your supercurricular activities, and to build those in. So what we're looking to cover is your interest in the course, why you're interested in it, why that course in particular, what drives you. You may well talk about the relevance of the subjects you've studied and how they've brought you to it. But then there is this kind of academic engagement outside the curriculum, so supracurricular activities. So reading material around the course and what has really kind of inspired you from what you've read, but it absolutely doesn't have to just be reading, and it doesn't have to be reading at all in a way. We could be talking TED Talks, we could be talking work experience, anything that is a wider exploration of the subject area, I think is really, really important, and it comes in a variety of different ways. You know, certainly be creative with it. Now, people often asked about extracurricular activities. So these are, if you like, sports, they're hobbies. And what I would say is that we do care about them. We want well-rounded people, and we want people that can come to university and enjoy it. But what we want is, in the personal statement, we want those to be related back to the skills and the abilities that it has given you that make you good for that course, make you good for university life. and it can be very difficult, and it's where the critical thing comes in again, because you may be incredibly proud of the fact that you've got a gold medal in swimming, or that you play rugby at an amazing level, or that you are, you know, amazing on the violin, and they're all brilliant and very worthy things. But the reality is you've got to link that back to how it's going to be useful for you at university and how it's useful for you at that course. Okay, you may be a gold medal swimmer, but when it boils down to it, the aspects of that you may well be interested in is what it's taught you about yourself. The standard at which you swim is not of our concern, and I mean that in a nice way, because some people don't swim. They like to read, they like to watch films, and there's no way of rating that. Okay, so we do care, but you want to be relating everything back to the skills it's given you rather than the ideas themselves. Now, there's also the admissions assessments, and what you're going to find is that depending on what course you apply to, and I'll show you a table in a minute, but what course you apply to, you might be doing these in different ways. So the vast majority of them are pre-interview assessments. Now, these are the ones that you need to register probably on the in the 15th of October, but as I say for BMAT, a little bit earlier. And the best thing to do is to go to the website that has your course on it, and then you'll see all the details there. Okay, so there is everything there for you, because it's very difficult to go over all of the different options that potentially students might be choosing. One piece of advice really with the pre-interview assessment is it's very useful to revise the content of the relevant subjects. So, you know, if you are applying for history, it's worthwhile revising a little bit of your history on the kind of approach to those things, because that's just sensible. It's also very sensible to practice under time conditions, just to get an idea. You know, if you know how much time you've got for the admissions assessment, it's very useful to see what you can get done, and kind of learn about your ability to manage your time. There are example questions on all of the websites, so you can get a feel for what's there, and I would urge you to have a look at them. Now, there are some at-interview assessments, and the idea is you don't have to register for those, because if you're invited to interview, that will be obviously where they're performed. Now, I need to be honest with you, we don't know how interviews are going to work this year. We would obviously love to do them normally and have people in Cambridge. It may well be that the situation doesn't allow that, and we have to go to a plan B. We are in the process of preparing the plan B in case it is required. But that means that if you like, the at-interview assessments, while they will still be done at interview, they may well be done in location, as the pre-interview ones were. We will keep you updated as we hear, but again, there is another set of potential admissions assessments that might be done at interview. All the same things apply. Revise the material that's relevant, practice under the conditions. That's just, I think that's very good advice. And then finally, there might be some submitted work. So 1 or 2 essays that you may have submitted. Now, these will be ones that you've actually submitted for your A-levels or whatever you're studying, and your teachers are marked, and then they'll pass them on, or you'll forward them to us. And again, it's really good idea that if you're invited to interview, that you have a look over your submitted work, look over your personal statement, because these are things that we may well ask about. And this is really, I'll just flash this up very quickly, but this is the current table which shows whether there is a pre-interview assessment, whether there is an at-interview assessment, and actually some colleges, you'll see in the kind of second half of this, some colleges actually have, well, some colleges may require an at-interview assessment and others don't, and it actually, so it's worth kind of looking at the individual college websites to work out what's going on with those ones. It's all down on the link over here, so really just to stick to time, I won't leave this up too much, but you can always watch this recording back, and it's worth just Googling Cambridge assessments and you'll get all the information you need, hopefully. Okay, so we move to interviews, the dreaded interviews. I have to admit I love them personally, but I guess I'm on one side. So the typical situation with interviews is you would have 2 20 to 25 minute interviews. It does depend a little bit on the subject, and again, what you need to do is look at the college websites, and they will tell you what the interviews how they're run. They are, we will also, if you're invited to interview, you will be told all about the interviews within the invite, so you will know about them. But like I say, typically it's 20 to 25-minute interviews. Now, what they are is a kind of interactive assessment of many of the other things that, if you like, we have on paper, but we're very much looking to obviously meet you and assess it for ourselves. So it's things like your interest in the subject. We're going to do a kind of, you know, is this person really as passionate as they say they are? Your aptitude in the subject. So we're really making sure that somebody, again, does have the ability to come here and thrive, that their level of ability will allow them to walk in on day one and go, you know what, this is under control. Okay. Core knowledge and technical skills, again, go in that. We're really looking for people that have the ability to just be okay with things. It doesn't mean that everyone is, if you like, perfect from day one. In fact, that is very rarely the case, but it just means it's somebody that we can go, you know what, they'll be okay. They'll come in and they'll be able to thrive here. There's also a kind of assessment in terms of the capacity to learn more information, take on information, direction, and actually listen kind of within a discussion. Again, it goes back in a way to the fact that one of the huge strengths of this Cambridge system is the fact that we have supervisions, these small group teaching where you'll be with a group of 2 or 3 other people and one of the lecturers, and we'll be asking questions and you'll be asking questions of us, and we'll be really just kind of, you know, making sure that everybody really understands what's going on. And sometimes it's the ability to say, well, actually, what you're thinking is not quite right, and think about it this way, and does this analogy help, does this explanation help? And we want people that kind of go, okay, yeah, I see where you're going there, and it involves a kind of change in mindset, and it's something we want people to be flexible, because in later study and in research, no matter how much you want something to be right, sometimes it's just not. And we've all had careers where the thing we were really betting on unfortunately turned out to not be right, but you have to listen to what you're being told by the data. So that's kind of where that comes in, and that's what we're going to be trying to do within the interviews. And the way we tend to do it is with these kind of problem solving scenarios and discussion around them. So what we'll do is we'll start off talking about something that you know about, and that you've done at kind of A-level or GCSE. And then once we've spoken to you about that, we'll start pushing into other areas. And, well, what happens if I tell you about this? And what happens if maybe this changed? And what we're looking at is how people take that information on and use what they know in a less familiar area. So it's very much about the thought processes. What I would urge you to do is look on the website. So again, a quick Google search, and other search engines are available and they're very good. But if you do a quick search for Cambridge interviews, you'll see that we've got films and we've got example interviews going on there, and they're really, really useful things. You know, they'll get you a kind of feel for how they're going to be conducted. So what to expect at interviews? You're going to have focused and challenging questions. You know, the idea is to challenge everybody to see how they can take information they know and use it in other areas. So it's going to be a challenge. We're going to basically use new approaches to stuff that you already know about. So we're going to work out where you currently are, and then we're going to try and take it in an area that, in all fairness, you probably won't have expected. But that's the great thing, because if we go down a kind of route that is it allows you to formulate new ideas and new material, the idea is we're really looking at how people can do that and how well they can do it and their thought processes. So in interviews, speaking out loud is a very powerful thing. You know, going through it and going, well, I'm thinking this and I'm thinking about that. Oh, but maybe that would get in the way, or maybe that would do that. That's a really nice thought process for us to see. We will prompt you with things, so we will lead you. It won't just be about you coming in and kind of leading the way. We will very much structure it for you, and it is your chance to ask questions if you have any. And I know from yesterday's kind of go at this, some people were kind of asking, well, do you have to ask a question? The reality is you absolutely do not have to. With the internet now and everything else, people know an awful lot more than they maybe did 20 years ago. If you have a genuine question, by all means ask it. If you don't, that is absolutely fine. It makes it has no impact whatsoever. Okay, so the interviews are usually going to cover, obviously, your academic work, what you've done so far, what you understand about it. It's going to try to cover your subject related wider awareness. So that's kind of to some degree assessing your supracurricular and extracurricular and how it all fits in. It may well cover your reading or your supracurricular exploration and experience. So we may well say, oh, you said in your personal statement you'd read this book, so let's explore some of the ideas in there. And we absolutely don't expect you to have a encyclopedic knowledge of the book, but it's very much about saying, oh, one of the main themes was this, so tell me about that. That's what may happen. It may not. We also have prompt material. So I'm a vet, so it's not outside of my remit to bring bones and various other things into the interview so that we can talk about them. So that's something that could very much happen. Potentially in something like archaeology, they could bring in an artifact. That's the kind of idea to use it as a way of discussing things. But what I'd absolutely say is down at the bottom, it says, look, there is no hidden agenda to interviews, and it's absolutely true. What I've said to you is what we're trying to achieve. There is no hidden agenda. There are no trick questions in it. We're just trying to find out, if you like, how people think and where they can take things. And it isn't the final hurdle. So it's not that those that do well at interview are the ones that go forward and ones that don't do so well at interview don't. It is, of course, part of the process, but we use it as part of the whole subject, really. We use it as part of the whole assessment. So it is not the final hurdle, but it is a piece of the puzzle. Of course it is, because it's our chance to meet you and to find out how you think. So as I wrap things up, we always kind of finish off, or I tend to finish up with the kind of common pitfalls, the things that can potentially go wrong, and the things that maybe lead us to maybe not invite someone to interview. The wrong subject, it might be apparent that actually this is somebody who's the subject that they're applying for may not be their great passion, and or maybe that they're going for a very focused subject where maybe they're better off at a more generalized one, or vice versa. The subject knowledge might be insecure. So if somebody is not necessarily working at the level that means they will come here and thrive, obviously that is a potential problem for us, because we don't want anyone to come here and struggle and be unhappy. We will support everybody, but there comes a point where you just feel that this is somebody who unfortunately is not working at the level that we require. And really, that's where things like the typical offer comes in. That's what we're looking to assess, but also when we look at things like the admissions assessment and the GCSEs. Lack of relevant exploration around the subject. So, if this is somebody who's very passionate around their subject, we really kind of would expect that they have gone down the route of actually doing more and looking into other areas and being stimulated by them. So potentially a lack of that can obviously be a bit of a shame. Poor organisation. Any university course in any university, because there is such an independent kind of aspect to it, independent study, you need time management skills, both basically for work and play. You need to be able to say, I've got the work done and I've got it under control, so that I can go out and I can enjoy myself and I can do what I love doing. So there's that's a very important aspect for us, and we really are that's why we're looking at that aspect as well. The ability to engage with questions that get asked. So we want people that are gonna, again, if there's something that you don't understand, we want people to go, well, why not? What am I not getting here? Because that's wonderful in supervisions for us, when people kind of say, no, I don't get it, help me, explain this to me, get me to understand. That's a great thing, but it means engaging. It means not sitting there and going, it's all right, I'll get it later, because sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. Insufficient kind of clarity of thought or analytical engagement. So not kind of, well, first of all, taking information and really understanding it, I guess, is what the clarity means. Really being able to make it part of the bigger picture, and rather than just learning it, to actually understand it. But then analytical engagement is the fact that, trust me, at university levels, you will see lots of very different points of view. My big interest is neuroscience and the brain, and there are loads of competing theories for how things work, all of which are perfectly valid. So you need that analytical ability. And finally, the unwillingness to rethink ideas. So as we talk you through things like the interview, and as we go through ideas, it's really important that sometimes people say, you know what, that wasn't my understanding of it, but I'm starting to see now how this works. That's great. So a lot of times at A level, and even at first year and second year degree level, you'll be told things that turn out to be maybe half-truths, or the right thing to get you to that level before we take you further. And so it's really important that you kind of say, okay, I used to understand this, but now I understand that I've got to integrate it with a slightly bigger picture. Okay, they're not lies, they're just ways of making sure that we can get you to one level before we move you on to the full horrors of the next one. But it's part of the fun, trust me, it's part of the absolute fun. So I'm going to stop talking and allow my colleagues to pitch in. But what I would say is the summary of all of this is you have to be convinced you're on the right course. Okay, so it's got to be a match of your aptitude and your interest. You know, you've got to be passionate about it, but you've got to be able to do it at a good level. Your academic track record, it needs to be strong, and it needs to be an ongoing kind of strength. So you've still got some room in the tank. You've still got the ability to kind of push further. Read and explore outside the course. And again, these are the 4 R's, the 4 very dubious R's. But the read, it's not just reading, it's exploration around the course. It's you know, really getting your teeth into it and thinking, this is amazing, this is what I want to do. And then revision, you know, going back over the material you studied, being confident in your underlying knowledge, really so that you know that you can come here and you can thrive. So there we are. Timing's not terrible. I've certainly done worse. Thanks for listening to me. And what we've done is, what we'll do now is we'll switch our mics and videos back on. The idea is we start working through the chat function and effectively answering your questions. That's the plan. So I will switch myself back on. Here I am again. Yeah. Right, if I can ask the other two to, because I haven't seen the chat now, I've been focusing on my little bit, so if I can ask the other two to take control for a second while I have a sip of coffee, and then we move forward.
Daniel, we can't hear you. Daniel, can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
That's
yes,
perfect.
Well done.
Okay, am I still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for that, Stuart. I think Stuart's done such a good job that he's answered all the questions already, because only a few have come in, so well done.
Oh, I promised I wasn't looking at it, so that's just advantageous.
Yeah, no, I'm just touting for more questions. So
absolutely.
If any questions at all arise from the presentation, or you have any other questions, please send them in. If we run out of time and don't have a chance to answer them all before the end of the session, just send them to the email address that I sent back up at the top of the chat. Maybe if I go first, so we have a question about really about the personal statement. How should you go about being critical about the text that you're writing in your personal statement? Well, I would say that the personal statement should be very personal. You should be writing something about yourself, rather than taking the example personal statements that you've been given by your teachers at school and attempting to create a clone of those. You should be doing your own creative, independent writing about yourself, and you should really be critical. So, you know, I overheard some of my first year students describing a Freshers' Week activity they were involved in, which was personal statement bingo, and what they were doing was they were getting points if they'd mentioned passionate in their personal statement, or good time management. Okay, so those statements will be in those phrases will be in most personal statements, and the element of being critical is asking yourself, well, if I'm going to include it, what does it demonstrate? What does it explain? And have I justified it? You shouldn't just drop in that you've been passionate about, well, in my case, chemistry since a young age, without justifying and explaining that. Otherwise, it really just becomes a checklist of things that you've done and things that you like, without reflecting on how they've changed and influenced your academic progression, and how it's likely to influence your trajectory. So I think being critical is, you've got a very tight word limit. Be very careful that every word that you've got in there says something important and that you've justified it.
Can I just add, I'm not sure if this question was also talking about sort of criticising texts in terms of literary texts, or texts related to your subject. And it's, if you are applying for humanities subject, it's really nice to see some stuff about the things you've been reading and what you've been thinking about them, how the things you read changed your perspective or gave you new ideas, and different links that you've made between the different texts and books and things that you've been reading. as well. Just thought I'd add that. Shall I do the next one, Daniel? Sorry.
Yes, a question about if you don't meet
question from Yasmin. Yeah, if you don't meet the typical level for your subject, say by 1 grade in 1 subject, would you still consider the applicant? Is it still worth applying? I think I need to say here that if you've already done your A-levels or equivalent qualifications and haven't met the typical level in the results that you've achieved, then Cambridge probably isn't the place to be applying, because we just have so many applications and the vast majority of them will have achieved that minimum level in the grades. But if you're, as will be the case for most students, applying not having your final grades yet, but in that final year of secondary education, you might have predicted grades from your, well, you will have predicted grades for your application from your teachers. If those are just a tiny bit under what's needed, then it depends on where the weakness is, but we really are expecting to have that minimum threshold that is given on the website for each of the subjects, because I'm afraid it is just incredibly competitive. There's another question, which I think is probably best addressed by me, about ab initio courses. Yeah?
Yeah, I was just going to say, while you're getting ready to answer that, I thought I would simply add that that's absolutely right what Kirsty has said about minimum or typical offer levels. It may be the case, I mean, we do get applications from candidates who've had particular circumstances, extenuating circumstances, and if their application perhaps looks a bit weaker on the academic front, they will have explained why that is in their extenuating circumstances form. So we really do consider every application holistically, but as Kirsty said, extremely competitive.
Yeah. So the question about ab initio courses from Yasmin, for the at-interview test, what happens if your course is ab initio? What kind of thing do you think would be tested on? All of the various at-interview tests will have a specimen paper and description of what's expected on the Cambridge admissions website. I'll give linguistics as an example because that's my own subject, and this is an ab initio subject. We start completely afresh at university. We don't have any specific subjects that we require as your A-levels or equivalent in coming into linguistics. We like students who've done languages, we like students who've done English or sciences, maths, all sorts of things, but the admissions test is not testing you on any of your kind of A-level material at all. We're interested in your thinking skills and sort of natural intuition about how language works. So you can have a look at the specimen papers for the linguistics course, and you'll see that there'll be usually a data question, a question with a graph of some linguistic data, various categories and things presented, and then you'll be asked a number of questions to interpret the information that you can see in the graph. And that's something that you can do without having any prior formal linguistic knowledge. You don't need to know lots of specialist terminology or anything like that. We're interested in your ability to analyse and think logically and creatively. Also, for all of the ab initio subjects, the ability to put an argument together and write clearly. Your writing skills would also be part of what was assessed. For archaeology, there'll be some relevant text, sort of comprehension and analysis exercise. Again, not assuming formal technical training in the subject, but looking at your thinking skills and ability to analyse when presented with new information that's relevant to the subject. And I might just add here that not only for the written assessments, that's the case for the interviews as well. So for linguistics, you'd be given various problems in the interview. You might see a transcript of a dialogue between a young child and a parent, a child that hasn't yet mastered English, a toddler, and all those cute little things that they say when they're still working out how the language works. And then you'd be asked to sort of comment on different features of that dialogue without needing technical terminology, just to be able to see that you can pick up on what the important features of the language are, and what they might tell you about the stage of learning the language that the child has reached. For ab initio languages, again, it's important that you've researched the language and demonstrate your enthusiasm for learning that particular language, perhaps have done some reading in translation, English translated versions of novels or other readings in the language you want to learn, and show that you've been actively engaging with getting to know the language and culture without having had the formal training in that language yet. Okay, what's next?
We've kind of got a related question. I'll step back in. We've kind of got a related question, how important the admissions test is for NATSCI, but I mean, it's probably a generic answer. The admissions assessment, like everything else we ask for, is part of the picture. It's part of the puzzle. I guess ideally what you're looking for is somebody who's kind of GCSE levels or whatever they've done kind of prior to their current study is good, that their A levels or whatever they're currently studying is good, and then in the admissions assessment they do well. Now that is a very rare beast indeed, I think I'll say. You know, there is usually some areas that are strong, some areas are weaker. So what we're looking for is obviously those people, because it's a competitive application, those people that do well at the admissions assessment and all the other aspects. That is a very good sign for us, but it tends to kind of go up and down, and of course everything is relative. So you want to try and do well at every aspect is the simple answer. But for something like NATSCI, what I would use, because it's a good example, is part of the NATSCI assessment is mathematics. That's there, but you might not have A-level mathematics. Some do, but not all do. So when I look at the breakdown of the results, what I'll do is I'll look and say, well, actually they don't have A-level maths, so I'm probably not expecting them to be in the top 10% of that. And you take these things into account. That doesn't mean they have an advantage and they can just sack off the maths side and say, well, I never did it. But you're kind of saying, well, look, I don't expect that to be as strong, but I would possibly expect other areas to be stronger. Obviously, if somebody doesn't have A-level maths and still gets the top 10%, that's amazing. But what we do is we use it as part of the whole thing. And it's the same advice for every single aspect. Do the best you can. You just try to do that. But almost everyone that applies is strong in some areas and weaker in the others, and that's just the nature of the beast. I think, is that fair to say? I'll ask the other two.
Yep, sounds right to me. I've had a question about
holistic thing.
Yeah, had a question about computer science. Okay, so the numbers on computer science are managed at university level. Each college is allowed a quota. We're allowed 2. I had to fight for 2. We used to have a quota of 1, but 2 is the optimal number for supervisions, in my opinion. And so 2 students and 1 supervisor. So when we're allowed to take 2 computer sciences students. And while I'm here, I might answer a question about GCSE results.
Daniel, is it worth just doing the poll there? Sorry, first, because of the nature of that. Is it worth just doing the poll quickly and then? Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So if, say, in a given year, Selwyn was oversubscribed with excellent computer science applicants, we'd put the ones that we weren't able to fit into the intercollegiate pool, and then they'd get fished out by, well, they may get fished out by other colleges, depending on the situation in a given year. And similarly, if we only have weak applicants, which is an event I've not yet observed, but if we were to have only weak applicants, and then we would need to go to the pool and fish out computer sciences applicants from there. So there is a balancing mechanism in case one college or some colleges are over or under subscribed. That's not just for computer science, that's for all of our courses. The vagaries of the applicants, undergraduate applicants, mean that there can be swings from year to year. Really, I suppose the result of that is, I mean, I would make a statement which would be that you shouldn't try to play a numbers game. If a college has had a particularly high number in one year, doesn't mean that they're going to have a high number the following year, and the same with low numbers. So really, when you're choosing a college, it should really be a personal decision about where you think you'd like to live and work for 3 years and study for 3 years, rather than try to play a numbers game as you go through your admissions process. So there was a question about GCSE results. Do we look at all GCSE results? Well, yes, we do. However, given that they were taken some time before the application was made, we weight them accordingly. They're just one part of the holistic assessment. And so specifically for a natural sciences applicant, we would indeed look to see what the music and English GCSEs were like, but that would just be one part of the overall picture, rather than maybe if they hadn't gone as well, you wouldn't necessarily be concerned about that. That also follows on to a later question about what do we think of as an academic trajectory, a good academic trajectory? Well, basically that's a way of saying that maybe if an applicant's GCSEs haven't gone as well as everybody else who's applied that year, we will be checking to see if there's an explanation for why that is. And it may be clear that that applicant is simply a late developer. We don't all develop academically at the same rate. And so we're not going to automatically disqualify someone simply because of a particular set of GCSE results. But we would be looking for all applicants to really be hitting their stride in the final years of their schooling and really look like they're going to be able to have a lot of promise for subsequent years. Okay.
I've got one on here, which is what kind of information is in the SAQ, the supplementary questionnaire that I spoke about, and it's a really good question. So we ask about some school data, and really that's about things like, well, the postcode of the school and home postcodes, and it tells us really we can put that into a database, and it tells us what opportunities people would have had. And the other thing, we also ask about class sizes. So we'll ask about, how many people were in your physics class, how many people were in your chemistry class. You can tell I'm a medic. They're my knowledge areas. So we ask for those kind of things, and what we're trying to do. I should say as well, we also get data about how the school performs. So I went to a school that I think it's fair to say possibly wasn't the best school in my area. As such, so I have 1 A star at GCSE and then a whole load of A's and B's, and yet I'm here as an admissions tutor. But when they actually ranked, or if I was then ranked against how I did against the rest of the school, it would, if you like, be quite high. So we're trying to look to make sure that we're not just looking at a set of grades and saying, well, that's what people got, because obviously people's opportunities, people's ability at schooling, they are going to be different in different places. The other thing I would say, and I would say this is the really important thing about the SAQ, is that you get something called the extenuating circumstances form in there. And what the extenuating circumstances form is that if you feel that your education has been disrupted in some way, that is your chance to fill it in. Now, obviously, with the current pandemic, we're actually trying to formulate a separate thing for that. But obviously, people have a wide range of experiences over their time in education. And it's very much, as Daniel was saying, it might be that, maybe GCSE history didn't go brilliantly, but something happened just before that exam that totally explains why that happened. That would be the place to put it. The last thing with the SAQ is you also get to do a personal statement just for Cambridge. Now, what we don't want with that, and I promise you we don't want, is for you to say, Selwyn is amazing, Cambridge is the only place I want to study, or anything else. What we want, and it links to another question I've seen, is let's say you were applying for something like, well, natural sciences again is the thing, because we don't do biology and chemistry here as subjects, we do biological natural sciences. So you might be applying to all the other universities for biology, but for Cambridge, you might have applied for natural sciences. So write your main personal statement for biology. Write for the one that's applicable to everybody, because the University of Leeds is not going to want to see you saying, I really want to do natural sciences. They're going to go, we know where you want to go. So you write your main personal statement to apply to everybody, but it might be in your supplementary personal statement. You say, yeah, I've written that about biology, but it's actually natural sciences because I want to be more diverse. That's your opportunity there. Okay, so that is what the supplementary questionnaire really covers. It's extra detail that we feel we need.
Yeah, can I just add, that's very much the case for some of the arts subjects as well. If you've chosen Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic which is a Cambridge degree, but not available anywhere else. That's a very specific combination of those history and languages and literature topics just at Cambridge. You'll probably be applying for history or something broader for most of your courses. So again, you talk about the Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic stuff specifically in the SAQ for Cambridge. What's next?
Okay, so shall I go next? Yeah, okay, so we have a question about whether interviews are guaranteed or not, and the answer is no. The courses are so competitive that you will need to have made a strong application in order to be guaranteed an interview. Having said that, in Cambridge, around 2/3 or 3/4 of applicants do get interviewed. So it's perhaps a little different from at some other universities, well, one other in particular, whose name I won't mention.
Oxford.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was really cheeky.
Oh, sorry.
Lovely place.
Can I go backwards? I just noticed the one from Catherine about HSPS. That's Human Social Political Sciences, which I answered exactly, only I said for Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic. But again, so this question was, if you're applying for a Cambridge-specific subject like HSPS, how do you do that in your UCAS thing? So again, talk about the HSPS specifically in the SAQ.
I'm aware of the time actually, because we've got something starting on another channel, but we can certainly keep going for a little bit, but I will just give a kind of slight warning. There is one here: what value do you place on EPQs, so on projects? I always have the same answer to this, which is if you want to do one and you're passionate about doing one, great, do it. If you don't, then that's fine as well. The reality is some schools are not able to offer EPQs, and we can't be biased towards people that have done them versus people that just didn't have the opportunity. What they are is a very good thing to talk about in your personal statement. They're a very good thing to talk about in the interview if you're asked questions about them. But I would also say that if it's something you're not passionate about and you're not interested in, then don't take them, because I think it shows up at interview more than anything else. If somebody hasn't really engaged with it, that's a real shame. Whereas when someone's passionate about it and have enjoyed it, that also comes across.
Sure. There's one from Jamie here. What is the likelihood of being able to see the college and meet subject tutors in person before the application date? Look in your crystal ball. Do you want to say, Stuart, perhaps about we've got a hope for doing an in-person open day in September, but we just have to see what happens with the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we will do what we can if it's safe to do so, and it would be lovely to obviously invite people here. The only thing I would say is if the situation is relaxed and obviously making your way to Cambridge is possible and safe to do so, you can visit the vast majority of colleges by walking up to the front door, which is the Porter's Lodge, speaking to the porters, who are effectively kind of very nice security guards and do various other things around the college. But if you just say to them, look, I'm a prospective student, I'd really like to look around. If the situation allows, then that would be more than possible. Certainly at Selwyn, we have it happening an awful lot. But it has to be safe to do so. And that is the problem with the situation. The only reason we would say no is simply because it is not safe for yourselves and not safe for us, if you like. What is the likelihood, as Kirsty says, it's crystal ball time. It's very hard to know.
It may be that there's more. I mean, at the moment the colleges are closed, but when we start in October for the new year, a new academic year, it may be that this kind of casual visiting will be possible again. Just ring the Porter's Lodge of whichever college and see how you go. The other thing I'd add is this has been a new experiment for us doing virtual open days. We set up some Zoom sessions for certain subjects, but it seems to have gone quite well, and I suspect we'll be doing that again. Well, we will be doing that again in September if we can't have an in-person open day, and we might expand the range of tutors and subject offerings that we put on in September as well. So keep an eye out on our webpage.
So there's a question about what information is in the SAQ. shall I have a go at that?
I think
Yeah,
we've covered enough
well,
of
if there's
that, or-
anything missing, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
no, I think that's fine then. Okay, so there have been a few questions about international students and international applications. So we do indeed consider the school context for our international applications, and we have, well, you can see the guidance for school qualifications, which is available on the university website. So we will be able to assess the attainment of our international applicants relative to those of our home A-level or international baccalaureate applicants. So we also will, for many of the courses, the international applicants will be sitting exactly the same admissions assessments as all the other applicants, and so that really does create a level playing field. It makes it very fair for our international applicants. For other courses, there will be at interview assessments and then also the interviews themselves, and so we really are able to assess our international applicants in the same way that we assess our home ones.
Got another question for Daniel here. This is from Laura. I really like the college and I'm thinking of applying for general engineering. I'm a bit concerned it hasn't been mentioned. Do you accept many engineering students? Daniel.
Well, yes, we're doing a very broad brush general admissions tutors session here rather than a specific course specific question. We do indeed admit a large number of engineers, usually around 10 or 12 per year. So it is one of the larger courses that we have here in Selwyn. As you say, it is general engineering for the first 2 years, and then you'd specialize in your subsequent years. So yes, we think that's much the best way to for most of the Cambridge courses, actually, they'll almost invariably start off with a fairly broad base, and then the specialization comes later, so that we enable our applicants or our students really to find out where their strengths lie as they go through the course, rather than having to specialize immediately. And we think that's very much the best way to do it. You'll see that when you compare Cambridge with other universities, we will generally start with a broad base and then specialize later, rather than going straight in and doing a specific type of engineering from day one, or a specific type of science or linguistics or whatever.
Now, I'm afraid, unless the others have any other questions, we kind of need to wrap it up, because we do run another session for the parents just afterwards on the same channel. So, I mean, if there is any that you would like to do.
There are lots of questions that we haven't answered yet, but if everyone could push send emails.
Yeah, we could push a little bit more time if you want, but I have to upload the video as well. But this will all be available as a video. And the other thing is, you've got the email address at the bottom there, admissions@sel.cam.ac.uk. So if there is anything that you really would like to ask about, feel free to send us an email about it, and we'll get round to it. Sorry, if there is one you want to do, Kirsty, please do.
Well, so we definitely need to be done a bit before 11:10.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps Stuart, you could answer. Is there a preference for 4 A levels over 3? A question from Shreya.
Yeah. So the reality is, every year we will accept and make offers to and accept students that have both 4 A levels and 3 A levels. What I guess we have to be aware of is, obviously, someone doing 4 A levels has taken on a larger workload. And we need to be respectful of that. They've shown that they can cope with a bigger workload, but I guess we're also asking them to still go on and meet what would be the typical offer for that subject. So the reality is that if there's 4 subjects you want to do and 4 subjects that you feel you can do well at and perform well at, then yeah, that is potentially a stronger hand. But in the same way, there are some people that are potentially only offered 3 A levels. Plenty of schools and colleges will only allow you to take 3 A levels, and as such, we can't obviously we can't say, well, that person hasn't got a 4th, because they didn't have the option to. And it always feels like a kind of slightly evading the answer, but the reality is that what you want to do is you want to do as well as you can at those that you want to take. So we will get a lot of people applying with 4. Occasionally we get people applying with 5 or more, and I don't want to shock anyone, because it always makes me go whoa. But you will get people that are applying with larger numbers of A level. But really the key thing is, perform really well at those you can do. Okay, so if you can do 4 and you can do well at them, then in a way, rightly, that should strengthen your hand. But we have to be mindful of the fact that there are alternatives and that people may only be able to do 3. So do as well as you can at those 3 and show us that you can perform well within the context of what you're doing.
Perhaps before we finish, there's a couple of things that I hoped we would mention as well. One is to explain about the dog on the slide. There's a picture there of Roger Mosey, who's our master, and that is Yo-Yo, his dog, who is very much a Selwyn pet as well. So if you're a dog person, then maybe Selwyn is the college for you. And we also haven't said really that much about choosing a college. It's a very personal choice. It's the place where you're going to live. It's what all colleges have in common is that they're a smaller community within the big university, and all students are very happy whichever college they end up at. We obviously think Selwyn's a great college and would really like to encourage you to apply to Selwyn, but you'll be happy whichever college you end up in, which does sometimes isn't the one that you chose on your application, as Stuart mentioned about the pooling system. So Selwyn has all of the accommodation on site in the one place on Grange Road. We're right next door to the Sidgwick site where most of the arts and humanities courses are. We're also very close to the West Cambridge site and the maths site. It's a small to medium-sized college, very friendly, very diverse, extremely supportive staff, and very happy students at Selwyn. Is there anything else to add?
No, beautifully done.
Well sold.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is we've also spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks doing our website. So hopefully you booked in via it, but please have a look at it because it would make us feel so much more validated if we have a lot of traffic through it. We've tried really hard, so I hope it's useful for you. I will need to wrap it up there because I do need to get on, or my boss will get very upset with me because they're up next.
I just want to make one last plug, which is on the website. There's a student alternative prospectus as well, and we'd have loved to have real students to show you around the college, give you tours, and you get the student perspective, but the best we can offer is to have a look at the student alternative prospectus and get a sense of what it's like to be a real student at Selwyn as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Kirsty's trying to get me fired, I can tell.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks very much, guys. As I say, if we can be of help, email, please. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for joining. I hope it's been useful, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay, I will log us all off.
Bye all.
Yeah.
Bye all. Yeah.
Bye-bye.